Welcome to another episode of Erik Wait Whiskey Studies, and in this video, gonna do a head-to-head comparison between the Laphroaig Lore and Eredauer's Ballechin. Laphroaig Lore Islay Single Malt Scotch Whisky versus Ballechin Single Malt Scotch Whisky. Laphroaig Distillery was founded in 1815 by Donald and Alexander Johnston on Islay. The name Laphroaig means the beautiful hollow by a broad bay. In 2005, the distillery was bought by Jim Beam, and in 2014, Jim Beam and Laphroaig Distillery was bought by Suntory Holdings. The Laphroaig Lore Islay Single Malt Scotch Whisky is peated at 35 to 45 ppm before fermentation, is matured in a marriage of casks aged 7 to 21 years, including ex-bourbon, European oak, and Oloroso sherry barrels and quarter casks. It's bottled at 48% alcohol by volume and sold for around $135 in my neighborhood. The Ballechin 10-year-old single malt Scotch whisky is produced by Eredauer Distillery. The name Ballechin originates from a fellow Perthshire farm distillery which closed in 1927. In 1825, Eredauer Distillery was founded in Pitlochry, Perthshire in the Highlands by 3 men and was run by a consortium of farmers. Eredauer in Gaelic means between two rivers. In 1982, the distillery was bought by Pernod Ricard's subsidiary, Campbell Distillers. In 2002, the distillery was bought by a signatory vintage Scotch whisky company, which was founded in 1988 and is primarily an independent bottler. The Ballechin 10-year-old single malt Scotch whisky is peated at 50 ppm before fermentation, matured for 10 years in ex-bourbon and Oloroso sherry barrels. It's bottled at 46% alcohol by volume and sells for around $82 in my neighborhood. So one of the best ways to learn about whiskey is to do side-by-side comparison. There's reading books, reading perhaps online articles, tasting whiskey by itself, but really to understand a whiskey, it is best to try them side by side. And typically you want to find a whiskey that is very comparable in terms of its age, profile, and maybe even price. So if you look at these side by side, you can see both are sherry and bourbon cask. Both are heavily peated. The Lore is 48% ABV, whereas the Ballechin is 46% ABV. The Ballechin is a 10-year-old, whereas the Lore has a range of age that went into it. So you get the age off of the website, not on the bottle. And if they went with the youngest age, rather than an NAS, this would be only 7 years. But this whiskey is far older than a 7-year-old, so they went with an NAS. But the price comparison is quite substantial. The Ballechin is well under $100. The Laphroaig Lore is well over $100. Now, in terms of the sherry cask and heavily peated, or at least moderately peated, that is my favorite profile. And there are a lot of sherry cask peated whiskeys out there. Think of the Glendronach peated, for example, as a Highland peated, which is like Ballechin from Eredauer, a Highland peated whiskey. But in terms of a fruit character, the Laphroaig Lore is really, 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 really dark. So when I was thinking about what do I want to do a head-to-head with the Laphroaig, I can't think of another sherry cask peated whiskey that comes into the range of the Lore other than Ballechin. In fact, these are both so dark, so rich, so intense that if I was doing this blind, I might be tempted to think that it was matured in PX cask. But neither one of these, as far as you know, they don't have any PX in it. So, in terms of the peat, it's dark, it's sooty, it's ashy, it's like a fire that's gone out, And the same with the Ballechin. The fruit character, most sherry cask whiskeys, you get the figs, the dates, and the raisins. This is so dark, it's beyond this. This is more like a prune. And the same for the Ballechin. Which again makes you think more of a PX cask. The only thing that keeps me from really thinking it's a PX cask, it's not as sweet. PX has that, even on the nose, has a more sweet character. There's a little bit of saltiness on the Lore. Not so much really on the Ballechin. Now, if you tried the Ballechin by itself and not put it up against Lore, you might go, wow, this is really, really, really dark. This is far darker and richer and earthier and sootier than it particularly, maybe it's even within my range of what I prefer. But then you go up against the Lore and you're like, holy shimolians. Yeah, this is earthy, but man, it's got nothing really on the Laphroaig. Laphroaig is really, really earthy. I reviewed the Ballechin a while back, and basically I was saying how it's basically like dark chocolate dipped in dirt. The Lore is even more. So both of these have a dark chocolate character. The Lore, the Laphroaig, has a little bit more of a salty character, a little bit more of a nutty character. By putting the Ballechin up against the Lore, the Ballechin seems younger, and yet it's a 10-year-old. It's got a 10-year-old's age statement on it. This is supposed to be like a marriage of like 7 to 17-year-old. Smelled and tasted blind, I would probably go, it's probably seems more like a 10 to 12-year-old. In fact, you might even go more than that. And you might, it's almost heading into Octomore range in terms of the intensity of it. And I have just the dregs of an Octomore 8.1. So if I had and it's been open for quite some time. So if I had a third bottle to bring into this, I would probably bring an Octomore. If you go to the Wizard Academy Whiskey School, they do a lot of side-by-side comparisons. So I've taken courses with the Edinburgh Whiskey Academy. There's the Wine Spirit Educational Trust. And there's other whiskey organizations. There's the Council of Whiskey Masters. Council of Whiskey Masters doesn't do any training in terms of tasting. You have to figure that out and do it on your own. Side-by-side, particularly at the master's level. But at the Wizard Academy, they do everything in threes. They have these sort of like wood Glencairn holders, and they do everything in threes. Daniel Whittington, in one of his videos, the Whiskey Vault videos, he talks about that 3 is better than doing 2, and 4 is too much. I actually was doing 3 whiskeys. I was doing the Bunnahabhain Tuig a Ga, spelled like Tuig Teach a Da, but the Bunnahabhain Tuig a Ga seems way too young. It's not in the ballpark of these whiskeys, so it's really not a fair comparison. I have a lot of peated whiskeys. Nothing comes close to the Lore, other than Octomore. So I'd have to go buy a new bottle of Octomore to try it against the Lore. On the palate, I'm actually going to start with the Ballechin on the palate. Wow. Deep, rich, dark chocolate, earthy, more into the prunes. It's almost a charred earth. Maybe a fire has gone through the hills and burned out all the trees and the grass. And so what you have is the remnants of a forest fire. That's what the Ballechin is like. It's not a campfire, it's a forest fire. It does have a little sweetness. It's got a real nice, soft, round mouthfeel. Super long finish. I mean, I'm still tasting it now. Doesn't necessarily have a whole lot of change from front in the middle and into the finish. But if you want peat that's going to smack you up the face, Ballechin might be a bottle that you want to try. Definitely going to have a little bit of water in between these. Neither one of these need water added to them. The Ballechin, it's half empty. The Laphroaig Lore, it's about a third empty. They've had plenty of aeration. Both of these whiskeys, if you're buying a new bottle, you're going to want to get them past the neck pour before judging them, or at least have a week dram, put the cork back in, and then let them sit for a few weeks before approaching them again. They do need a lot of aeration. And if you are having a neck pour, a drop of water will help open them up a little bit and become much more harmonious in the different characteristics. Wow. This is almost going into like black licorice, almost burnt black licorice. There's more spice on the Laphroaig, but again, it's that forest fire, prunes, saltiness, a little nuttiness. There's a little bit of vanilla coming in there and fudge. You have more of a fudge character in dark chocolate with the Laphroaig Lore than you do with the Ballechin. On the palate, man. I will probably be tasting this for a few days. And I don't mean going back to the bottle and pouring another glass. I just mean it's that intense. There's that much saturation into your palate, into your tongue. It's really soaking in. You're going to taste this for days. The length of finish on this is forever. You wouldn't want to try tasting any other whiskey after this. This is just so overwhelming. It doesn't necessarily have a huge development, and yet a little bit of sweetness up front. Then it's just dark, rich chocolate, fudge, just a hint of salt, a hint of nuttiness, dark caramels, fudge, just a little bit of vanilla comes up in the mid palate, and then it's earth and fire and smoke and saltiness, and that just kind of lingers for days. The Laphroaig Lore, I have a lot of Laphroaigs. It is the Laphroaigiest. It is the Laphroaigiest Laphroaig. In terms of the reputation of Laphroaig, people talk about the 10-year-old and a lot of the advertisements and commercials and stuff. Man, Laphroaig 10's got nothing on this one. This is the most overwhelming. Man, you go back to the Ballechin, on its own, it's insanely intense. But going up against the Lore, it's comparatively mild in comparison to the Laphroaig Lore. The Laphroaig Lore is just, it's a beast. It is a peat beast. And if that's what you're looking for, I would highly recommend it. Now, what would I give these as a score? I would give typically the Ballechin, I'd go like 88. And when I'm into or looking for or have a hankering for a sherry cask peated whiskey, it's really not what I'm looking for. I tend more towards, Highland Park. I like a Highland Park cask strength. It's kind of the character that I really, really like. The Ardbeg Ugadal I really, really like. The Laphroaig Sherry Cask is one that I really, really, really like. This Laphroaig Lore, this is when you want to get smacked upside the head. Or if you just had a meal with a lot of garlic and you need to get that garlic out of your mouth, hey, the Laphroaig Lore would definitely do it. Laphroaig Lore has more going on. It has more depth. It has more richness. It has a little more sweetness to it. You might not notice that sweetness on its own, but in comparison to the Ballechin, again, I'm not down in the Ballechin. It is what it is. Absolutely fantastic. So I would go 88 points on the Ballechin, and the Laphroaig Lore, I'm probably going to go like 90 to 92 points. And that's going to be, it has enough complexity, development, and length of finish is spectacular. But in terms of variation, it's pretty much the same front, middle, and the finish. But it has enough oomph and strength and power and longevity to get me over 90. So I'm heading into like 92 points. This is absolutely superb, but it's going to be a whiskey that I'm going to have if I'm really into in the mood for it. It'd be interesting to try it with an actual, bite of fudge or a chocolate chip cookie. So the winner in this competition is the Laphroaig Lore in terms of the overall profile and taste and flavor and aromas of the whiskey. However, the price is substantial. This is in the 80s range, and this is $115 plus. Of course, price ranges can change depending on where you're at, what state you're at, where you're at in the world. So prices are always variable. But generally speaking, the Lore is going to be higher than the Ballechin, but both are widely available. Now, so if I'm taking the money out of my pocket, is it worth the extra bucks to get the Laphroaig Lore? I think so. I wish it was closer to $100, let's say $99 or $105 than the price that it's at, but it is that good. It's worth spending the extra few dollars. All right, let me know down below if you've ever had the Ballechin and the Lore and what you think about these two whiskeys side by side. If you've not already, please like and subscribe to this video, and until next time, Sláinte. Hey, don't forget to subscribe and check out these other whiskey videos.